Hello, everyone. Welcome along to the Rangers Rabble podcast. My name's Bryan, and I'm tonight's host, and I'm Talking Wolves with Dave Azzopardi. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you, mate. Thanks for having me. This isn't my normal setup. I'm away on holiday at the moment, but yeah, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Good stuff. So, yes, we're obviously here to speak about the impending loan of Fabio Silva to Rangers from Wolves. I believe it's a straight 6 month loan deal, no option to buy. How do you see this from a Wolves point of view?
It's an interesting one with Fabio. I really like Fabio Silva as a player. I have done for a long time. Obviously, he was very highly rated when he joined Wolves. Around COVID time, we spent a lot of money on him. We spent around £35 million on him, and I was really excited about this signing. And the initial idea was to bring him in as like an understudy to Raul Jimenez, who was on fire at the time. And, you know, if you follow Premier League football, you'll know that Jimenez got a really nasty head injury. And ultimately, Fabio was thrown into the deep end a lot sooner than expected. And during COVID, no fans there. Wolves are a team at that time where it really thrived on the fans being in the ground. That's how we did so well under Nuno Espirito Santo. He scored a couple of goals. In terms of his goals and contributions to minute ratio, it was good. He scored twice against West Brom, which not many Wolves players do, as they're our fiercest rivals. Yeah. So I actually thought as a debut season, it could have gone a lot worse for him. But the following season, he really struggled. Didn't score a single goal in the Premier League. And just a player almost felt like it was never a lack of work rate. It looked like he was almost trying too hard. And then ultimately, he went out on loan, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But I think in terms of this, I think it's the right time for this move. I think Fabio is a very good player. I think he'll give his all for Rangers. But ultimately, I don't see him ever playing in a Wolves shirt again. And that's not to say I think he'll move to Rangers on a permanent deal. He may well do next year. I don't know. But I think this is really almost an audition for him to prove to everyone that he is a good footballer. He can score goals, and then that he can play on the highest stage in Europe, with you guys obviously still being in the Europa League as well.
Absolutely. Obviously, he was on loan twice last year. He was at Anderlecht first, where he scored 7 and 20. The second part of the season, he went to PSV. He scored 4 and 14. I suppose from what he was doing at Wolves, that's, he was given a bit more exposure at these clubs, because obviously certain either managers or director of footballs at those clubs knew him, took him on. So is it a case of that he's obviously very young? He went to you guys at 19. He's only 21 now. Was he coming from Porto to you guys a big ask for a 19-year-old to jump straight into the Premier League effectively?
I think it was a huge ask, and I think, like I said earlier, at the time it was COVID as well. Everywhere was locked down, so it wasn't as if he was coming to I think he joined towards the just before he was 19. So if you were moving to a new country at 18, barely played any senior football, to new country which is in lockdown, I think it's going to be a very difficult situation. If you had fans there, they can help calm the nerves sometimes and so on. But he joined the club in such a difficult situation as well, because the quality of football had dropped off, massively. So I think I've said this so many times on our podcast and talking to people about Fabio Silva, I think he's a very good footballer. But sometimes in football, you get players that join teams, and for whatever reason, it doesn't work out in the league, or it doesn't work at a club. And I think this is one of those cases that Fabio Silva, I think, will have a very successful football career, and he'll probably have a successful 6 months at Rangers, I have no doubt. But I just can't see him playing for Wolves, and for whatever reason, it just hasn't worked out.
Yeah, he's obviously not too bad in European football, because when it comes to Europa League or Conference League, he did really well last year, and obviously I think he plays for the Portuguese under-21s as well. So it's, as you say, it's strange how he can adapt to that environment, but yet for you guys, it just hasn't worked out.
Yeah, I think it's almost from day one. I think he had a lot of pressure on him, because at the time he'd broken our transfer record as well. And I think with football, we all view football, we all have our levels of patience with football are sometimes slightly different. If Rangers lost 3-0, there'll be a portion on Saturday, and I'm sure there'll be a portion of your fans that will want the manager sacked or whatever. I know he's quite new, but you know what I mean. And I think that's the same with Fabio. You spent a lot of money on him. A portion of our fan base understood why we paid the money, because it was for potential. But when you are paying that much money, and for Wolves it was a lot of money at the time, you want instant impact, and Fabio didn't show that. But like you mentioned there, his record for Portugal under 21s is phenomenal. He's got such a good record for them on an international level. I actually went to Belgium to watch him play for Anderlecht last year as well. Typically, I picked a game which they were awful in and they lost. But to experience that and actually see him play on, abroad was really interesting, and obviously experience the difference of level. But then you see Anderlecht were really poor last year, and by far their best player. So the amount of goals that he scored, considering how poor they were, was impressive. And that's why Wolves needed for him to move him to PSV, where under Ruud van Nistelrooy at the time as well. It was a nice move, and he scored goals. I think he scored the winning penalty in their Dutch Cup victory as well. But I think this is important. Rangers are obviously going to be towards the top end, and fingers crossed for you guys, you can go on to push and win the title, and still in Europe. You're going to be a team that creates so many chances, and Fabio thrives upon that. He's such a clever striker for a young player. The runs he makes are so intelligent, and Wolves, we've got a couple of players like this at the moment. We've got players that almost, I think, would suit teams that have loads of the ball, whereas Wolves don't. They're a counter-attacking team. They don't have huge amounts of the ball. So I think with Fabio, if he's playing for a team with lots of the ball, creating lots of chances, he will put the ball in the back of the net and score plenty of goals for you.
So from what you're saying there, I can gather he is a stripped out number 9, not a sort of 10 plays behind.
I think he can play both roles. I think he likes to be on the ball. He likes to come deep. He works hard. But at PSV, they played him off the left quite a little bit as well. I wouldn't say he's a natural winger. He's not slow, but he's not rapid by any stretch of the imagination. So I wouldn't expect him to be a traditional winger. But I like him as a poacher, really. I like him on the shoulder of the last defender, and you put balls into the area, and he'll put it into the back of the net. But I think his overall hold-up play and his contribution, although it's not quite worked at Wolves, there's enough there when I watch him to show that he's a capable footballer. And no disrespect to the level of football in Scotland, because you see how well Celtic and Rangers can do at the European level. But I think against some of the teams there, he could cause some real damage.
Yeah. Is he a favoured right-sided or left-sided, or is he one of these guys that's both? I
think he could play. He's a right-footed generally, and I think if you're going to sort of, like I said, if you were going to play him out wide, you'd probably want to play him almost as an inside forward on the left, so he can cut in on his right foot. But he's not a selfish player either by any stretch of the imagination. So I think he'll bring other players into play. He's a player. You'll see when you watch him. He's a player that just enjoys football. And at the moment at Wolves, there was an instance a few weeks ago, and I'm sure some Rangers fans will pick up on it. And I think it's the last time Fabio wore a Wolves shirt. He came off the bench against Sheffield United. The game's at 1-1, and he gets penalised for a foul, which turns out to be a penalty right at the end of the game, and we lose 2-1. VAR gave the penalty. Reports after said it shouldn't have been given. So he was unlucky, but he was distraught. He was crying after the game. And again, there was a split in our fan base about that. Everyone's saying, why on earth is a grown man crying about this? But I know, mentally, he's had such a tough season. He's worked hard to break back into the team. And one thing he does, he gets penalised for, and it shouldn't have been a penalty. So I think that just broke him, really. And I think he just needs a fresh environment. He's somebody, like I said, with confidence. You'll see he enjoys football. But Wolves worked really hard to get him to stay. He was adamant he wanted to leave in the summer. At the time, Lopetegui was our manager, really wanted Fabio to stay. Obviously, we changed managers, and for whatever reason, it's just not worked out for him. So, I think a low move, especially, is probably the right thing to do.
And guys, get your questions in if you want to ask Dave a question about Fabio Silva, just as Paul has. Paul's asked, has Dave seen what we're doing with Sima, with the progress he makes to go back to, could a similar thing happen with Silva in the sense that he scores a few goals, goes back to Wolves rejuvenated?
I honestly can't see him again in a Wolves shirt. I think this loan move will be almost to try and get some value into Fabio. In regards to, at the moment, we've not scored a Premier League goal in a long time. His stock is at an all-time low. And I don't think we'll ever sell him for that £35 million that we bought him for. But I think at this sort of stage, if he can compete for Rangers, if he goes on to win the league, or if you guys go on to have a good Europa League run and he contributes towards that, in the summer, Wolves could say, actually, we could demand £20 to £25 million for him. And that's in a much better place than what we would have been today. So I probably would say there's less than a 10% chance he would come back to contribute back to Wolves. I think this is pretty much a shop window move for him. Get him in the window, get him playing some football matches, and trying to get him amongst the goals.
Now, this is a fear that most Rangers fans have had in the last few seasons. Alexander's asked a very valid question. Um, is there any injury concerns with Fabio Silva? Because as soon as we sign a player, they just get plagued with injuries. So everybody is now crossing their fingers, their toes, that this guy is not plagued with injuries.
From what I remember, I can't. I'm going to have a very quick look whilst we speak, Bryan. But from what I remember, I can't remember, especially during his time at Wolves, of him having any major injuries. Really, just having a look. You go on transfer market. His only ever injury that comes up on there was when he had coronavirus in 2021. So no, nothing of note really. He's not got any sort of recurring injuries or anything like that. So that's the thing with him. And I think a lot of Wolves fans always seem to say with Fabio, he's not quick enough, but I honestly, he's not, like I said earlier, he's not rapid. But I remember there was a couple of times where, with 50-50s with defenders, it was against Brighton. He missed a great chance, to be fair, but 50-50s against Brighton defenders, he was running past them like they weren't there. So I think good couple of weeks. I mean, he may well join 1st of January. It should be great for him just to, hit the ground running. But by the end of Jan, if he's amongst the goals, then I think from then onwards, you're going to see a really confident player and, hopefully, hitting some good form.
Yeah. Well, the good thing is we'll have a game against Kilmarnock on the 2nd. So if it's done and dusted by,
that'd be great to see him then.
Yeah. He'll be involved then. And then we have the winter break. So he'll have a good sort of couple of weeks just to get involved and all that. But is he... I noticed he's 6'1", so he's not the sort of smallest guy. He's obviously, is he good in the air?
I would say so. I mean, like he's. I'm not going to say he's going to win every single aerial duel, but I think he's definitely going to put himself about a little bit. He's in terms of how he looks and his sort of build as a player from when he came to Wolves to now. It's like it's a different player. He put on. I think it was just before he joined Anderlecht, you could tell he had a really good pre-season. He put on a lot of muscle and he just looked a lot better. From the first season he joined, it was like we just signed a young lad, like a boy. It was nothing to him. Get easily shrugged off the ball, but now he's really well built up. And I think he knows that he scored a couple of great goals for Anderlecht in Europe and he took his top off and he showed off his abs a little bit. So and he has got that. I think with Fabio, he knows in his head. In Portugal, he was the player. He was so highly rated at Porto. And any football manager fans in the chat will know, and still is, he's like a very, very good player who's so highly rated. And he still can be. I think Wolves fans forget he's only 21 years old, It feels like he's been around for ages. But yeah, he's really well built. He'll get himself about, works hard. He's just confidence, mate. I think that is the main thing at the moment with Fabio.
Yeah, and obviously we got Niels Koppen, the head of recruitment from PSV, and obviously they were joined last year, so there's a link there. Obviously Koppen likes him and has recommended him to Clement, the manager. So there's that link as well, isn't there?
Yeah. I think, that happens a lot in football. I wasn't aware of that, so it makes perfect sense, really. And I think that shows, to the Rangers board and staff, if they signed him already, and he must have been impressed if he wants to try and sign him again. So I think that bodes well for Fabio, and it shows sometimes you need that. It shows that someone cares and someone rates you as a footballer. So I think that will mean a lot to him as well. And obviously there were big rumours that he was linked with Celtic as well. It was quite funny. There was a report that Celtic were leading the race, and about 10 minutes later, Fabrizio Romano said that Rangers were getting him, which I'm sure is always nice for you guys as well to beat them. But I think he'll be a really good player.
Yeah, it was quite comical. I think there was somebody put a YouTube video out saying that the Celtic were front runners, and then 10 minutes later, as you say, Fabio released it. So it was quite. We lapped that up absolutely. There's a question here from Jim. How physical, robust is the lad? Is he suited to the Hammer Throwers League? Because we face a lot of hard tackling in our league, and is he quite robust? Is he durable in that respect?
Yeah, I think. He, as a Portuguese player, as a European player, there will be probably times that he will go down and maybe roll around 3 or 4 more times than he should. But there's also times where, like I said, with his attitude as a footballer, he'll get up and just get on with it. The one thing, and this was even before my comments about him sort of building himself up. The one goal that I I mean, it wasn't an enjoyable game for Wolves, but I think it was his first Wolves goal was against West Brom, a big rivalry for us here in the West Midlands. And there was one goal where he almost backs into a defender, and it's a big centre half, and turns him and then positions his body to finish it off really nicely. And I thought for somebody at 18 years of age to have the intelligence to do that, to hold a big defender off and still somehow turn and get the finishing was really impressive. But I know he's not scored a huge amount of goals for Wolves, but he's a very good finisher, in my opinion. And I think one-on-one with the keeper, he has missed some good chances this year for Wolves, and no doubt. So Wolves fans watching will probably laugh at me for this, but historically he has been very good at, one-on-one finishing and creating himself opportunities as well. Like I said, with Rangers, you'd expect them to have a lot of the ball. You'd expect them to create a lot of chances. And I think in and around the penalties, in and around the penalty box, he'll thrive on that.
Yeah. So it's interesting you're saying he's obviously very good in the box, but he's also very adaptable at coming short. That's quite an unusual thing for a striker to be good at both things, because you would normally there's one guy that's like an out and out penalty box, like sort of predator in the box, and then there's the guy that likes to link the play and doesn't score many goals but gets the attacking midfielders. And so it's good that you're saying that he's got a mix of both.
Yeah, I think he can. And I think even if Rangers have still got a number 9 now that's fit and scoring goals, Fabio can still play a part. And like I said earlier, whether that's off the left or even as a second striker just in behind, closer to a number 10, really. I think he has got that quality. But I don't know. I think I saw comments earlier about his wage as well, because there's a weird conception online that he's on like ridiculous money, which
80 grand a week or something.
Yeah, I don't think he's on that much, because even Anderlecht paid it in full. They didn't pay us a loan fee when they had him last year. And I think, if I'm being realistic, it's still a good whack. It's still probably between 40 and 50 grand a week, but it's not as high as the £80,000. And I don't think Rangers would pay the £80,000 in full either. But I don't know. I really hope he kicks on for you guys. I think Rangers can be a club and can be a level that he's going to enjoy. He's English in terms of speaking, has come on a hell of a lot in the last 12 months as well. So he's going to have no problems with that. But yeah, I honestly think this has got the potential to be a very successful signing for all parties, Wolves, Fabio and Rangers.
Yeah. Well, according to Salary Sport, which is my sort of go-to sort of wages sort of look at, he was on 37,000 a week when he first arrived. He's now on 42. So
that makes a lot more sense to me.
Yeah. I must admit, when you said 80,000 a week, I thought for a 19-year-old kid, I thought that's that's an awful lot.
Yeah, he signed a renewal last year, I think, just to give Wolves a bit more security, but he hadn't done anything to warrant a 40 grand pay rise. So yeah, around that 42 grand sounds realistic as well.
Yeah. So as an overall sort of move for Fabio coming to Rangers, out of 10, how would you give, as a rating out of 10, how good a move is this for him?
I would say it's got to be quite. I would say at least an 8, because I think people that aren't that educated, or people that are, I don't know the right word. There are a lot of people, and you'll see, I've seen people I've posted it on Talking Walls today. I've seen people in the comments call it Scotland a Farmers League or whatever, and that's disrespectful. I mean, I don't watch loads of Scottish football, but I know, and you've seen over the last few years, Rangers have competed on a European level. Celtic can do, I'm sure, as well. And good players have come from Scotland, even in the Premier League. Van Dijk, amongst some of the best players that the Premier League has seen. And with Rangers now, I think, like I said earlier, you're going to create the chances. That's brilliant for Fabio as a striker. You're still in different competitions. I think the Europa League is one that he really kicked on in at his previous clubs. I mean, he was at the Conference League with Anderlecht and the Europa League with PSV. And in the league, so there's going to be lots of opportunities for him to play. If he's not playing in the league, I'm sure he'll play in Europe and vice versa. So I think 8 for me. I think I don't think there'll ever be a 10 out of 10 low move. A 10 out of 10 situation for me would be Fabio stays at Wolves and can score 15, 20 goals. But I think for him as a player, it'll be a really good low move for him. And still young, still very early days. But like I said at the start of the video, I think this will be almost putting him on the shop window. And I think it'll be frustrating for Rangers fans, because I think if he does really well, unless you guys can somehow get a big pot of money, I think Wolves are still going to be expecting sort of 20 to 25 million to letting him go.
Yeah, I think we're very realistic in the sense that even if this guy does really well,
You
I
can't
think
fall in
he's
love with
still
a lone player. Yeah.
yeah, I think he's still out with our reach as far as purchasing him. Just purely looking at his wages, 42,000 a week, that's a big whack for us even up here. So yeah, and the problem we've got up here is we signed Danilo from PSV in the summer, and he got a bad injury, I think October, November, which is going to keep him out virtually for the rest of the season. So we've only really got one or maybe two recognised strikers at the club now. So Fabio will fill a big hole in that. And there's a good chance that, as you say, he'll play league games, but he also play Europa League games as well because, just lack of numbers and having to, for Philippe Clement, you have to manage the squad well and, not use certain players for certain situations.
Yeah, no, I think that's important. I mean, we've got a couple of players at the moment. Wolves have sort of found their momentum with a pretty strict 11. There've been players like we've got another guy some people may have heard of, Sasha Kalajdzic, who's an Austrian forward, 6'7". He was injured all of last year. And he scored 2 winning goals for us this season and still can't start. He's really struggling to get into the team. So it's not just Fabio that's in this situation. I think Sasha could leave on loan as well. But it's important, not to say Fabio will go to the European Championships, but for players that could be in and amongst their international squads, they're going to want game time between now and the summer. So this could be a big opportunity for him. And who's to say? I think Portugal will be amongst the favourites. They'll have some seriously talented players, but who's to say Fabio doesn't hit a really good run of form that he'll be Roberto Martinez, who's their manager right now, has brought in some players that have never had a chance before in the Portugal first team. So who's to say that Fabio can't if he has a good second half of the season?
Yeah. A question here from Regis 1979. Is Silva match fit as we need him up and running straight away?
I would say so. He's missed our last 2 match day squads over the last week, over Christmas. But I think that's probably because this move was imminent, or a move similar to this was imminent. But he's pretty much been in the match day squads before that. I've wanted him to come on. We struggled. There was a game a couple of weeks ago. I think it was Nottingham Forest at home. We drew and we just lacked so much energy. And I always think with Fabio, he just runs. He's so energetic at times. So, I don't think he would be in the squad if he wasn't match fit. So I believe, like you said earlier, you might have a game right after the new year, which he may play a part in. But I think that winter break as well will give him a little bit of time to get to the level that Rangers need him to be at as well.
Absolutely. Well, Dave, thank you for coming on. Good insight. A young striker from Wolves, Fabio Silva, 21, coming to Rangers on loan from Wolves. My thanks to everybody in the comments for the questions. We hope this will be announced very shortly because obviously the winter window is starting on the 1st of January. So my thanks to Dave from Talking Wolves. The link is in the description below for the Talking Wolves podcast. And thank you, everybody. And we shall see you again very, very soon.